impacts all of our cities. And by sharing it with you, I really think that it's going to bring up some good ideas for you to work on wherever you are. So what is this issue that I'm talking about? It's out of school time. Now, this used to be after school, but because what we're talking about impacts before school, summertime, and those 50 holidays that kids get out of school, but our bosses have yet to recognize, the term we use now is out of school. And Texas Women's Foundation first started looking at this in a really serious manner back in 2014, at the beginning of our Economic Issues Initiative. Our partner at that time, and who continues to be, is Dallas Afterschool, and that's who you're going to hear from today. Now, Dallas Afterschool is a nonprofit organization that really focuses on leveling the playing field for families from a racial standpoint and an economic standpoint to make sure that everyone has access to high quality and affordable after-school programs to help level that playing field, so to speak. Their work involves policy advocacy, training program staff, developing and providing curriculum, and also workforce development. Through this work, they support over 180 partner sites here in the North Texas area. And what that equates to is over 12,000 students every single year. Now, the Texas Women's Foundation comes to this issue from the standpoint of working women. And after school is a very important part of the economic security for moms and for families. Surveys show that 81% of working parents state that they have greater peace of mind knowing that their children are cared for and safe and supervised after school. In addition, 89% of parents state that having access to after-school programming allows them to work more hours or to continue working. And that has a big impact on the family's economic situation. And then also, the majority of out-of-school time programs do provide snacks and often full meals. And that's big, important help as well to a family's budget. Now, we helped to fund the original after-school landscape map that was done back in 2017, and we actually presented it at Viewpoints like this. So there was really no doubt that we wanted to share this new, updated, and more accessible version with you. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Yanela Montoya now. Yanela is the Director of Advocacy at Dallas Afterschool, and we're going to have plenty of time for Q&A afterwards. So please make sure you use that feature in your Zoom. Thank you so much. Yanela, it's all yours.
Thank you for the introduction, Dina. It's a pleasure to be with you and with everyone on this call for the official release of the After-School Landscape Tool. Like Dina mentioned, my name is Yanela Montoya, and I am the Director of Advocacy at Dallas Afterschool. I'd like to start by thanking everyone at the Texas Women's Foundation who made this event possible and for their continued support of Dallas Afterschool. I'd also like to thank Michael Lopez from the Child Poverty Action Lab, who was an integral part in the creation of this tool. At the end of my presentation, Michael will walk us through how to navigate the After-School Landscape Tool. At the start of this project, we knew that we wanted to update our 2017 Access Map report. The goal was to create an interactive tool to improve access to after-school programs across the county by, first, identifying where current programs and seats are located. Second, to identify where additional seats are needed. Third, to continue to build on our relationships with after-school providers, government officials, schools, and funders to address the gaps in after-school program availability. And lastly, to build on the strength of existing programs. Before we dig into our findings, I'll quickly discuss the process we used to develop the After-School Landscape Tool. We used data from the 2020 U.S. Census Bureau, the American Community Survey, and Dallas Afterschool's Locator Tool, which uses data from the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services and the Child and the Adult Food Care Program, as well as our organization's knowledge of the after-school sector. A quick side note, our locator tool, which is different than the Access Map that you're viewing today, our locator tool does not track programs such as sports programs, karate classes, art classes, dance classes, or other clubs of that similar sort. So for the purposes of this tool, after-school programs are defined as programs that run at least 4 afternoons per week for 3 hours per day and serve children between the ages of 5 and 14. The map that is shown here shows the distribution of eligible children in Dallas County. This is one of the maps that you'll find in the after-school landscape tool. It also shows one of the metrics we use to help us understand the after-school landscape as well as the need for programs across the county. To understand the landscape of after-school programs, we assess 2 components. Number 1, the existing after-school environment, which we call supply, and number 2, demand for programming based on population characteristics. We scored each census tract on both components. So census tracts received a supply score and a demand score. To assess which census tracts have the highest demand compared to supply, tracts were classified into groups based on scores ranging from very low to very high. We then group those census tracts into the categories you see on the left-hand side of the table. Those categories include supply exceeds demand, demand exceeds supply, and supply meets demand. In the middle column, you'll find the total number of census tracts in each of those categories. And on the right, you'll see the total number of children currently living in those tracts. We know that the need for after-school programs in any given neighborhood will vary based on the demographic characteristics of that particular community. So we used the metrics to the far right to help us understand demand. Those metrics include median household income, the child poverty rate, internet access, single mother household information, and unemployment. When Michael walks you through the tool, you'll be able to see the percentages of these metrics in closer detail for each of the census tracts. The group of census tracts identified in the demand exceeds supply category were then refined into higher priority areas. To do so, these tracts include the following characteristics. 1, total number of eligible children above the mean of the county. 2, household median income below the mean of the county. And finally, a child poverty rate above the mean for the county. We identified a total of 44 tracts in this category, and there are 38,400 children living in those tracts. Like Dina mentioned, after-school programs have many benefits for families and children. Programs keep youth safe. They support working families by allowing parents or guardians to work longer hours, and they inspire kids to learn and stay engaged in school. Through this process, we learned more about the supply and demand of programs in the county, and now we will dig into those findings. Our first finding shows that there are a total of 376,000 children who are eligible to attend an after-school program. However, only 22% of those children are currently enrolled in a program. Of that 22%, 4% live in an area we identified as high priority. We know that over 100,000 children are without adult supervision between the hours of 3 and 6 p.m. And I know what you may be thinking, if a child is not in a program, then where are they? In a report titled Dallas After 3 p.m., which we published with the support of the After School Alliance, we found that 15% of kids who are not in a program are in the care of a sibling, and 18% are by themselves. And I'll let that sink in for a moment, because those statistics alone should mobilize us to work towards increasing access to affordable, high-quality after-school programs. The after-school landscape tool also revealed that program supply is not equitably distributed across the county. It's concentrated in certain communities. This screenshot, which is a preview of the tool, shows you that about half of all census tracts in the county received a score of 75 or greater on supply. And just over half of all census tracts account for 97% of all after-school programs. Yet, 63% of eligible children live in those tracts. The remaining census tracts account for only 3% of programs, and over 140,000 children live in those low supply areas. We also learned that demand remains high across all communities in Dallas. Very few census tracts scored low on demand, with only 24 tracts receiving a score of less than 50. We know that demand is high everywhere in Dallas. As part of our advocacy efforts, we gathered testimonials from parents at one of our partner sites. These reflect the importance of programming and further highlight the need for increased access to programs. I'll give you all a quick minute to read those. For those of you who don't speak Spanish, the last comment says, "The program is important for my children's academics. They are so happy with the program because it helps them and they have a good time after school." So now back to our findings. Through this process, we also learned that a large number of children live in areas where demand for programs is greater than supply. In those areas, the average median household income is $56,761. I promise I can read numbers. Which is lower than areas where demand is less than supply and demand is equal to supply. The ratio of seats to eligible children is 1 to 16 compared to 1 to 2 and to 1 to 3 in the top two categories. And the child poverty rate is 25.5% compared to the other two categories where the child poverty rate is slightly higher than 18%. The gap in program availability is even more striking in high priority areas compared to high supply areas. Like I mentioned earlier, 44 census tracts were identified as high priority, with 38,400 eligible children living in those 44 census tracts. Yet there are no programs available for families in those tracts. In high priority areas, the median household income is $46,728, which is lower than the previous categories we previewed and much lower than high supply areas. And the number of eligible children is more than double than that of high supply areas. In contrast, there are 35 high supply census tracts relative to current demand. These tracts have a child poverty of 3.8% compared to a 33.7% child poverty rate in priority areas. After conducting the analysis of supply and demand dynamics for after-school care, we called programs to obtain the average weekly cost per child in the county. We calculated that the average cost in Dallas County is $82 per week per child, and these numbers, of course, vary based on their category. This table gives you a breakdown of the total number of children in each group, the total number of seats, the total number of free and paid seats, and the percentage of children enrolled in free programs. In priority areas, the average weekly cost of programs is $95 per child, and only 1% of available programs are free. And previously, I mentioned that there are no programs in the identified priority areas, so this may be a bit confusing. Since there are no programs in high priority areas, we had to expand our search to 250 feet outside of the identified tracts to be able to calculate these findings. And I also know these are a lot of numbers to examine in a short amount of time. So we'll make sure that this PowerPoint is available at the end of the presentation, and you'll also be able to access all this information on the Afterschool Landscape Tool website. Through this process, we also learned that program costs looks different across program types. In the report we mentioned earlier, Dallas After 3 p.m., it notes that for 69% of Dallas parents, cost is the biggest barrier to accessing an after-school program. In Dallas County, the majority of after-school seats are in childcare centers, And typically programs in these centers are more expensive than school and community-based programs. And sometimes, oftentimes higher costs can be especially burdensome for low-income families whose children have limited enrichment opportunities outside of school compared to their higher income peers. As you can see, there are 0 free seats in childcare centers, and they account for over 50% of total available seats in the county. The table also shows us that schools make up the second largest number of after-school seats and have over 8,000 total seats with an average weekly cost of attendance of $69. The next being community centers with a cost of $66 per week, followed by faith-based centers and apartments. They don't follow in cost, but they do follow in the total number of seats. And the average weekly cost of faith-based centers is higher than both schools and community centers. One thing to know, programs located on school properties, community centers, or similar municipal locations are generally lower in cost. And before I move on to the next slide, I'd like to point out that federal COVID relief funding has made it possible to increase the number of free seats available in schools and in community centers. Our last finding taught us that when we work together as a community, we can concentrate our efforts and resources in areas with high needs. Using our 2017 Access Map, we worked collectively with Dallas ISD and the City of Dallas, as well as other partners, and that's resulted in improvements in many neighborhoods. The map on the left-hand side shows you that the high need areas of 2017, some of those neighborhoods included Census Trucks in Central Irving, parts of Oak Cliff, Pleasant Grove, Pleasant Mound, Casa View, and Garland. On the right-hand side, you'll find that some of those priority areas are similar, but fewer were identified in 2022. Here is an overlay of those two maps. I do want to make sure that I mentioned that in the 2022 analysis, we used the same data and process, but we defined the need more strictly. We really wanted to refine our methodology to hone into the areas that have the highest need. Some of those communities remain the same. Some include neighborhoods like Oak Cliff, Garland, Pleasant Grove, Irving, parts of Duncanville, and so forth. In no way are we saying that neighborhoods or census tracts that fall outside of the blue priority areas, don't have need. They do. These are just the tracts that had the highest need based on the metrics that we identified. And if you remember, there are 0 programs in those blue areas. Before I turn it over to Michael, I want to share with you all a testimonial from one of the 12,000 students that our work impacts annually. We asked him if he could tell us why he left his after-school program, and here is what he had to say.
It's fun doing stuff with our friends and our teachers. They help us with a lot. Stuff we don't know. They help us with our work, learn, and try our best, never give up.
With that, I will now like to introduce Michael Lopez, who is the manager of analytics at CPAL, who helped us develop the after-school landscape tool and patiently answered all of our questions and requests to make this tool accessible for you all to use and to ensure that more children have access to after-school programs. So on to you, Michael.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Yanela. Hi, everybody. It's great to talk to you all today. I am going to be sort of doing a quick walkthrough of the actual after-school landscape tool and sort of showing you guys some of the functionality that we added that we hope will make it better for everybody to use in sort of promoting after-school programming across Dallas County. So here you can see the after-school landscaping tool, and I just want to mention this is the introduction page, but really the sort of meat of the report will be under this mapping tools section here. And under the mapping tools section, we have 2 different tabs, one where we are mapping the supply and demand scores, which you saw during NLS slides, as well as the priority areas. So I'm going to jump into the supply and demand score, and as soon as you open this page, you can sort of scroll down and see this map. This is the map of currently demand scores across Dallas County based on our analysis, And what we actually generated is a functionality for you to be able to click layers on and off so that if anybody is interested in seeing just very high demand score census tracts, you're able to do so, as well as sort of like juxtaposing them against the supply side scores. And an additional functionality that you actually see here is that if you can zoom in onto any given census tract, you're able to actually hover and get a list of demographic characteristics for the given census tract that you've seen. So this can include things such as the supply and demand score. And in this case, for the census tract, you can see that the supply score is about 13 based on our analysis, and the demand score is 52, which indicates that the demand for after-school programming exceeds the current supply. And here you can see a number of additional metrics such as child poverty rates or single mother households. And if I can just zoom out a little bit, you can see here in a census tract such as this one, where we have 73% of households have internet access, the median household income is at $55,000 a year, and that sort of thing. This is going to allow you to really just sort of see Dallas County overall. And I do want to mention that for this analysis, there were a number of census tracts that unfortunately we did not have enough data to really give them a supply or demand score. And that is something that we hope to improve across in a future update for this report. But overall, you can still see some of the most important metrics here across Dallas County. Moving on to the mapping tool section here under priority areas, you can see some of those high priority areas immediately as soon as you open the mapping tool. And these are all of the neighborhoods that Dianella sort of mentioned as being both above the mean for child poverty rates, below the household income for the Dallas County, as well as a number of other metrics. And in this census tract, for example, you can see that the child poverty rate currently is at 43% in Mesquite, and that there are no current after-school programs. In this map as well, you can see a number of things such as anytime the demand exceeds the supply score, anytime the supply exceeds the demand, and anytime demand meets the supply across Dallas County. So overall, this functionality is really there so that any sort of group can really dive in and understand what census tracts really look like, and based on the markers that we felt were the most important for this analysis. Another thing I do want to mention is that while we focused this on Dallas County, we did include things such as the Dallas City Council boundaries, so that anyone that wishes to advocate to their city council member is able to see what parts of their council district actually fall under high priority areas, so that if they do wish to reach out and speak to their council members, they know the best way to advocate for is that. Alongside that, we also have under the after school section, a section detailing all of the metrics that we included in this program, in this project. And as you can see here, we have an introduction with the number of programs per square mile, but as you scroll down, you can see a deeper dive into the total number of after school programs by type, as well as the percentage of seats within them, and a mapping tool that you can see exactly where every type of program exists across Dallas County, and specifically what type of program they are. So as Yanela mentioned, childcare centers make up 55% of programs in Dallas County, whereas schools make up about 35% in Dallas County. And they sort of, as you can see, lie across the entire geography. If you scroll further down, we also have a number of the metrics that we identified in case anybody wishes to see them outside of a pop-up, to really sort of get an idea of what median household income looks like in Dallas County, or child poverty rate as well. And as you can see, for child poverty rate, these darker areas are where the child poverty rate is the highest in the county. Really, we tried to make the tool as functional as possible, while also being mindful that after-school programming is a very specific need here. As Yana mentioned, this is programs that meet at least 4 days a week for 3 hours a day. And knowing that these programs exist across the county and where they do are really important. But if you wish to find more information about any of these programs, the After School Access tool on Dallas After School's website is also another resource we have. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to be passing to Lisa de la Garza for the Q&A section now.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Yanela and Michael, for sharing this great information and resource for so many who are now in the process of looking for out-of-school time care this summer. We are going to open it up for Q&A. If you have a question, please feel free to drop it in the Q&A. We do have a couple questions so far that I'll go ahead and ask. So can you identify, I guess this is for Yanela, can you identify some of the priority neighborhoods that y'all identified through this?
Yeah. So I can't name a specific neighborhood, but I can point to the census tracts in communities like Irving and Oak Cliff that we were able to see in the priority map. And then I'll add, like we mentioned, there aren't any programs in those neighborhoods. So it's hard for me to look at a census tract number and be able to say, this is where it is. I think Michael might be the expert there. But yeah, so luckily you could see in the map the shades of those priority areas. And if you are familiar with your census tract or neighborhood, you might be able to find that yourself.
Great. Michael, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I do want to mention only that the way that census tracts work is that we know that they're sort of smaller geographies, but as you can see on the actual tool, if you just like to explore it, is that sometimes a group of those census tracts will actually make up a greater neighborhood. So things like Bachman Lake or Oak Cliff will pop up as areas that you'll see on as priority areas.
Great, thank you. And we had another question that just popped up. What is the role that Dallas ISD and the City of Dallas Parks Department play in providing after-school programming?
Yeah, so Dallas, if I remember the number correctly, started 53 after-school programs this year, and they're hoping to expand to 100. Our role with helping Dallas ISD is to be able to continue to provide training support like we've done in the past. In terms of Parks and Rec, they're still continuing their work being placed at different elementary campuses. And again, we're going to be able to support and advocate for funds for the for Parks and Rec so that they continue to provide those services for kids.
Great, thank you. And one more, it's kind of a two-parter. What kind of advocacy work is Dallas After School doing to increase access, and how can folks get involved and help with that?
So a couple things. We are going to use this tool to be able to have conversations with decision makers at the city, hopefully at the state level during this upcoming session, to be able to show them the need and to be able to allocate resources, whether those be funds or other types, so that we can help support programs. We also want to be able to start listening to what people have to say, right? If there's anybody on this call who has ideas on advocacy, I'll drop my email in the chat, and please email me. I'm always curious to know what people have to think or what ideas they may have to offer. And you all can also use the tool, like Michael mentioned, we've outlined the city council district. So if you can contact your city council member and express the importance of why we need programming, that'd be awesome. You can also reach out to us, and we can help you be able to shape or write out to what you'd like to write. And we want to be able to provide that support.
Great, thank you so much. A couple more questions popped up as you were talking. One response said, awesome tool. So kudos to y'all. How does the tool also show who the service providers are in that particular tract?
I'm going to let Michael answer that question.
Thank you, Yanela. Hi, thank you so much for that question, Beth. Currently, the tool only focuses on where the programs are provided, just because we didn't want to sort of rip apart that functionality from Dallas After School's after-school access like locator. So if you are interested in finding any additional information about the actual programs in any given part of the county, the Dallas After School website is going to be a much stronger resource than this report is currently for that.
Yes, we have a second tool called the locator tool, which shows you the name of programs based on zip code. We can also share that at the end for people to be able to access as well.
Yeah, great, thank you. And to all of those who are listening in, we will share the presentation afterwards with all of these links that they are referencing, so to give you all that information. Here's another question that popped up. Have you discovered any communities in Texas or elsewhere who are doing innovative things to address out-of-school care, or who have solved the out-of-school program problem? And if you have, share that with all of us who have solved it.
Well, I don't know of a specific city or neighborhood that's addressed the need. I'll certainly do some research on that if maybe that's someone we could partner with, because we certainly want to solve this issue for people in Dallas. Yeah, so we'll keep looking.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
Obviously, we're doing great work in the city as well, right? We're really
Yes.
working with partners to be able to expand access. But as we've highlighted, it's still a need.
Absolutely. So, and another quick question: is not having staff a problem for providing services in areas that really need it? So, I know there's a staffing shortage for out of school. So, is that one of the big reasons as well that out of school time isn't available or accessible?
Yeah. So, the OST system wasn't immune to the impacts of COVID. Like, staffing shortages were also something that was experienced. I'll say that our team has started an ECOS project where we're trying to help after school providers fill those staffing needs. And so it could very well be an impact as to why we haven't been able to increase the number of seats. And so hopefully through our work through ECOS, we'll be able to also help meet that growing concern that partners have.
Mm-hmm. Great. And here's another question that popped up. Are you able to track who is looking at the access map so you could potentially follow up with them afterwards? Is that an option or not?
I think that's a Michael question.
Currently, we don't have any prompts set up to see who is looking at the tool. We may, in a future update, if Yanela wishes to, we can add a sort of contacts list to the tool. And we do currently also have contact information for Yanela as well as a number of the Dallas After School staff, so that anyone that does wish to reach out after seeing the tool knows who exactly to contact about any questions or advocacy work.
Great, thank you.
Just drop my email in the chat for the people on the call.
Great, thank you so much. So thank you again. That's all the questions we have. And if you, for all of those that are listening, we will share all of the resources again. We will also share where the tool is housed and how you can access it, along with this video as well. So Michael, Yanela, thank you again for being part of today's event. On behalf of Texas Women's Foundation, thank you for joining us today for this webinar. And if you want to support our work that we are doing to support women in issues discussed today, please go to our website at txwf.org. And you can also join our Army of Advocates and encourage listeners to visit Dallas After School website and use the locator tool as they need. Thank you again, everybody.